Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is Jonas Reports for the 8th of May. Markets behaving pretty much as we expect. We've got our bigger ranges of volatility. We were looking for those to increase at the start of this month. We were also seeing that we continued decline of red and green suggested that we were going to have, potentially movement back and forth, simply because we had rising steel, which meant the short-term buyers, but overall still producing lower closes in this particular case. But again, it goes back to the positive extreme we were looking at, right over here, somewhere around that 62 range. That was 62 and a quarter. What it was the low, 62.50. So within one tick of that, a full setup off of that complete algo jump that we had back at that close to 28.70. All has a dip to 28.44.50, which conveniently is the 50% Fibonacci line. What a shock. Not really, but okay. And moving on to the NASDAQ, again, it's just a beautiful DSC spread that came across there later on. The issue is, of course, that reset of steel and the fact that it can come up. If we were looking at that steel coming, we'll look at this intraday too, because you'll see it when that steel comes above and then crosses back below. The potency of the short power is much more not just sustainable, but has a greater tendency to react quicker. And the euro, right in that 23% fluctuation. We can see that it was gaining some momentum, but potentially breaking with a short spread here. You need to see the green cross below that red to really suggest that we're going to have a little bit of a breakdown. Hasn't quite happened yet. And of course, gold staying within this little range. We would expect that to start to improve. I mean, this has been a pretty solid improvement from the shakeout as well as DOC. There's been some acquisition taking place at this particular spot, so I would expect that's going to begin its lift. And this is where we look at the ridiculous. So we talked about it the other day, where we were ending the day and clean shorts came through, and we were talking about that difference between a little bit of a rise in the red versus the rollover, and there was that steel coming up and crossing below difference compared to this previous one, and that obviously led to a much more precipitous drop. We had a little pop back into that, got just above the 50%, and then produced beautiful DOC spread. Again, steel coming from across the top, but most critically for this, and maybe I should just zoom this back in a little bit. We don't need to get so overall tight there, because we've kind of seen the broader picture. But I think what's important to note this, and I've talked about it before. In fact, let me just go ahead and even highlight it right here. So steel is crossing from the top down below cyan, but you'll notice that it's not dipping below red and then having that turnaround crossover. So from this standpoint, you're likely to be in a significant downtrend within this. So even the bullish cross of steel over the cyan right here doesn't produce anything, and you end up with continuation movement from that play, and then that comes all the way down until you get a full oversold reset here, well below the minus 20, which usually evokes some type of response. Didn't produce much of a response. From my standpoint, at that particular point, you should either be trailing the 50% if you're holding from a higher level there, or if you're more active, you can certainly play the little bounces in between. This becomes one of those subjective choices on how active you want to be. And on a down day like this, you're just looking for that continuation run. We did see some build of the Reduci coming along through here, but every time there was the opportunity for it to do something, right as it matched it, you get these beautiful spiders, meaning cyan crossing above green. In this particular case, it can be inverted, but it forms that little body that looks like a spider with the 4 legs instead of 6. But it becomes very clean on those moves when you see them happen, and then the rollover of the red. And this is something we were talking about before. When you're making these lower peaks, you can expect lower lows, and I mean, that's visually not hard to see when you're looking at this kind of a decline overall. The matching one, not surprising, price holds relatively even, but then continues to break down. So sometimes you'll get positive price movement on breakdown, and that's just an opportunity to attack. It's like, oh, boom, you hit 50% on that, and I'm breaking down lower, going for it. And then what you end up with is these little pivots, and once you can see movement above them, yeah, you've got to respect that, and that's usually what gives you your little motivations, and those pop. Likewise here, that steel coming from below, and then it crossed back above, and that'd be like kind of a little bit of a warning right through there, except for it's unable to cross above cyan. And that's the death knell for it, because at that point, not only does it not cross cyan, green doesn't get above red here, so midterm buyers aren't taking care of the slack or anything, and that leads to a precipitous drop because market participants recognize, ooh, we got nobody interested in the game at all. Let's increase this one more. By that time, you end up with some of these are decent because you know that when you're getting this dip, you're going to get some kind of pushback. So this just becomes a question of I'll a lot of times cover at or near the lows on these setups and then just reshort. I know some people like seeing the large, green ticker. If you're not around and not paying attention, then fine, you can leave those. But I think those are great opportunities to exercise an opportunity to just be clear. That way you're not fighting it one way or another, and it's easy enough to short into any break of the low given proper readings within that setup. And we started to then see these broader, higher high breaks along with, you can see it in the shakeout too. It had gold rising, even though every time I got close to meeting that dasher in this particular point, it just kind of rolled over, and then they met right about here for sort of what I would say was just a mediocre fleshing out of this low area. And then sure enough, they break the lows really quickly, deep oversold from that standpoint for that automatic reaction. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, because sometimes what those do is they'll get going and then boom, you all of a sudden then have green over cyan, whereas this one over here, cyan rejects and takes over, letting you know that it's not likely to continue. In this particular case, you have a very different reaction, and that led to what we're seeing is this turnaround pump going right back up to the 95 range. So all in all, really good stuff. No complaints with this at all. Hopefully they'll keep up this kind of volatility because it is just beautiful. As always, though, I will put up anything relevant, but certainly like talking about some of these key setups, and I think definitely something worth looking at because it will really enhance your ability to see some of these transitional points that change. You'll get a signal that says buy, but then, hey, when all of a sudden I'm meeting these two key elements and then getting a rejection, I got just the opposite, whereas they're meeting and the bullish side breaks over. Side by side couldn't be more apparent. Works out well. Trade well. Talk to you later.